Hearing none. Please stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You've looked at the agenda. Are there any questions or changes to the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, carries 5-0. I will restate the agenda items. First item is presentation of proposed budget and millage rate. The second, adoption of tentative millage rate. Then the adoption of the tentative budget. And then we'll establish the final budget hearing date. Okay. The first item on the agenda is presentation of the proposed budget and millage rate. Chief, I'll turn to you for that.
All right, good evening, commissioners, staff, community members watching from home. Welcome to the tentative budget hearing for fiscal year 2022-2023. This will be our proposed budget and our proposed millage rate. So let's jump right in. Thank you, Craig. Can you guys see the screen okay? All right, I want to start this evening's presentation off with our district's budget philosophy. So every year when we begin our budgetary process internally in January, we start one with long-term fiscal stability of the district being our principal goal. That means fiscal sustainability of operations, which leads to consistent community service, employee security, and these, of course, are critical organizational values to our team. When we look at long-term stability fiscally of the district, we employ economic forecasting for a period of 1 to 5 years. And we know in that economic forecasting model, our most reliable sets of data is the 1 to 3 year period. So in the budget that I'm going to propose and the recommended millage rate for all of you to consider tonight, we always include our adopted strategic plan in our budgetary philosophies and in our budgetary construction. When we get into that in February, March, April, after our capital needs assessment, we start looking at that community feedback, our internal stakeholder feedback, to help guide our budgetary and our funding priorities year after year. So it's really important that when we do that 3-year update to our strategic plan, that we get as much participation from our internal stakeholders as well as our community members, because that helps me and my staff set our strategic funding priorities for the district for the next 3-year period. So I highly encourage to be good stewards of that document, because it's not a document that just sits on a shelf. We use it every day, particularly this time of year, to help us do some strategic funding goals and funding projections. In the fiscal year 22-23, these are the strategic priorities that we are looking to meet from that plan. Strategic priority number 3, implement financial and revenue strategies to sustain current and meet future needs of the district. Achieve operational efficiency, strategic priority number 4. Strategic priority number 6, efficiently and effectively respond to emergencies. Strategic priority number 9, recruit and train for excellence throughout the workforce. Strategic priority number 10, ensure capacity to meet staffing needs at all levels of the organization. As well as, it's not a particularly expressed strategic goal, but planning for our new facility, because we are going to need a new facility at some point in the not too distant future. Are there any questions that I can answer on those strategic funding priorities for you, commissioners? So for fiscal year 22-23, the proposed millage rate that I am presenting to you this evening, we'll start with the rollback rate. Our rollback rate is 2.6463. Now, what does the rollback rate mean? 2.6463 based on the property value in our district will provide us the same revenue as fiscal year 21-22, which we're currently in. If the board elects to go with the 2.6463 rollback rate, that is going to represent a basic sustainment of our operations. Basically, what we have now is what this budget, this rollback rate would provide to us. It does not allow adequate planning for a new facility and new initiatives that we're planning on bringing into the organization to enhance operational efficiency and communication district-wide. The proposed rate for you to consider this evening is 2.9851. This is the same millage rate that we have had for the last 3 fiscal years. If the board elects to adopt this proposed rate, this will be the 4th fiscal year that we have maintained a consistent millage rate. It's 12.8% higher than the rollback rate, and it's critical for us to be able to adjust to the inflationary economic conditions. Just today, from turnout gear to new ambulance components for our 3rd rescue, which we're proposing, we're getting hit with potentially 10% cost increases on these items. The 3rd time prices are adjusting upwards, so the district needs to have room with the additional revenue that the proposed rate will provide us to be able to adjust to this inflationary economy that we're in, economic conditions that we're currently facing. Do you guys have any questions on that? And finally, the 2.9851 millage rate allows us to start to adequately plan for the new facility of Station 31 and a headquarters facility on the old Tops property. So let's talk a little bit about the why that I'm recommending the 2.9851 millage rate. Currently, the district is experiencing increased costs of labor, fuel, consumables, equipment, vehicles, and we need to plan on how we're going to absorb the increased cost of what a new facility is going to cost us when we get to the point of actually breaking ground. As anyone who has built anything in the community knows, these last 2 years have been absolutely horrible. We are experiencing increase in labor costs. We are experiencing increase in raw construction material. Transportation costs have gone through the roof. As a result, any major construction project has also escalated dramatically. So we need to be able to bring more cash into this project so we can obtain a sustainable long-term debt service for our community to be able to pay over the long term. So all these factors are why I'm bringing back the same millage rate as the previous fiscal years. So I want to spend a little time and talk about the Station 31 and headquarters facility project. So the project timeline has been delayed due to some factors: historic construction labor prices, historic construction material costs, supply chain disruptions. Our estimated cost per square foot right now is sitting at about $525 to $545 per square foot, and that's a conservative estimate, and that's assuming that our supply chains remain relatively stable. If we have consistent instability in those supply chains, we could be looking at $20 to $30 more a square foot. And the last thing the district or I want to do is to start construction on a project and we have piles of dirt out there and we have to stop because we can't afford to continue. In 2019, to give you an idea and the community an idea, we started this project based on quality research, quality data, and we estimated roughly around $12 million for this new facility. Today, we're looking at about $18.5 million. So that necessitates us to need more cash to bring forward to the table to achieve the best interest rate for our debt services, get the best lending conditions, and to achieve a sustainable debt service payment. So, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about our operation costs that we project for fiscal year 2022-2023. We're going to see about a 4.1% increase in our operational costs. Now, when I talk about operational costs, I am not talking about our labor costs. This is everything else but our personnel and our people that is our lifeblood of this organization. That 4.1% increase represents approximately $609,780. On the right-hand side, I've prepared for you a 20-year trend of our operational expenses. And you can see right around 2007 to 2010, we hit our historic high, and then we had the impacts of the Great Recession, and we're on a slow, steady upward tick, but we have not hit our historic highs of operational costs. Now, seeing operational costs going up, we have several operational cost control measures that it's important for you and our community to understand that we have in place to control costs where we can. So we use a strategic funding approach using our adopted strategic plan. So we're listening to our community, we're listening to our stakeholders to tell us what our funding priorities should be, what's most important to them, because ultimately all of you own the district and what it looks like and what it feels like to you. We plan very carefully for our capital purchases, which allow us to have stability in the mill rate, so our community doesn't experience these hills and valleys in the mill rate. It stays nice and consistent over a number of years. We use a competitive bidding and quotation process to ensure our community gets the absolute best price for whatever product we are buying. We conduct an accurate, factual needs assessment of every capital item every year to ensure that we know the condition, we know the location, and we ask ourselves, do we really need to replace this now, or can we delay this a few years? An accurate, factual needs assessment and inventory system is critical to controlling operational costs. And Jane and Scott do a wonderful job every year taking care of that, so kudos to both of you. Some of our challenges, again, in controlling costs is the supply chain, inflation, and of course the cost of credit, which will lead me to some recommendations for changing in our fleet funding methodology. So as we talk about cost control and our fleet funding methodology, our current funding methodology was based on an 80-20 funding model. So that means we had anticipated in the days of cheap credit financing our fire engines and our ladder trucks at a rate of 80% finance, 20% cash. That was for our engines and our ladder truck. We were self-funded or at 100% for our support vehicles, ambulances. My new methodology is we're going to keep the ladder truck on an 80-20 finance model, but I want to add fire engines to the self-funded model at 100%, maintain ambulances and our support vehicles. Why am I recommending we change this methodology in the new fiscal year? Is less funds for interest and credit payments, and we need to improve our organizational debt capacity when we look at taking on and building this new construction process. And for those community members that may be watching us from home, an organizational debt capacity is a debt to income ratio like we're all used to dealing with when we go to buy a car or a piece of property or a home. It's how much debt do you have versus how much income do you have coming in, and that leads lenders, government lenders, to give you the best ideal terms for that long-term debt service for the new facility. I'll pause here. Do any of you have any questions for me that I can answer at this point? Thank you. So in 2022-2023, our labor costs, or our personnel costs, will be 64 authorized positions. We're going to see an increase of about 2.6%, or $11,905,440. On the right-hand side, similar to our operational costs, you have our 20-year trend of personnel service costs. You can see, like the operational costs, we've had some hills and valleys, and we're on an upward trend. Now, when we look at personnel service costs, it's important to remember we are a human resource intensive industry. We need a certain number of people on a fire scene, we need a certain number of people on a fire truck, and we need top talent for our organization. We need well-experienced, well-trained people, and that necessitates us paying competitive wages to attract that talent and to retain that talent. When we go into our labor cost controls, we have this in this budget, reduced the number of staff positions. We've eliminated one assistant chief position. We've implemented strategies working collectively with our labor partners to control overtime. We've established 3 emergency service delivery models, which is our ideal model, which is 3 staff fire apparatus, 2 staffed ambulances, and 1 shift supervisor. Our moderate is 2 staffed fire apparatus, 2 staffed ambulances, and 1 shift supervisor. And our minimum is 2 staffed fire apparatus, 2 staffed ambulances, and no shift supervisor. Staffing levels equates to long-term control of overtime cost, which we need to control our overtime costs for several reasons, not just for the fiscal impact it has on the district. By controlling overtime, it allows us to offer more competitive wages, but also when you rely on the amount of overtime we have historically paid, particularly the forced amount of overtime, that has a detrimental impact on our people, their families, their children, their marriages, and their own personal health. So we have to have a control over overtime. Our labor partners have been working cooperatively with us, and we have a shared vision for how this is going to look and play out. And the ultimate benefit is it helps us control those labor costs for our community. Are there any questions on that?
Yeah, Chief, on the minimum
Yes.
standard, on the apparatus, is the staffing 3 on both?
Yes, we will, unless we have unusual circumstances, every one of our heavy apparatus will be running with 3 personnel. And 2 on the ambulances, of course.
I had a question, Chief, on the overtime. Have we had an opportunity to implement any of these policies that you're discussing that you plan on having in the next fiscal year already, and have you seen any impact?
Well, we have implemented these 3 emergency service delivery models probably 6 months ago. We have seen a dramatic reduction in the amount of forced overtime, but we were in a spot where we had so much turnover, and unfortunately with recruitment of firefighters and police officers, there's not a lot of interest right now currently in our society. So we were at a very low staffing level, which still increased the amount of overtime, but limited the amount of forced overtime. Now we're starting to see the amount of overtime kind of drop down, and as we fill our open positions and operations, we're anticipating seeing further reduction. And then with the recently ratified District 15 collective bargaining agreement, we also have seen changes to battalion chief overtime, which will also provide a dramatic reduction to overtime costs as well. So my answer to you, that was very long-winded, but my answer to you is yes, we are starting to see the benefits, but we won't see the full benefit until we have all of our staffing positions and operations filled, and we're getting close. We just brought on 3 people, and we got 5 more really talented folks that are working through our pre-employment process right now. So we're getting close, and we will see some dramatic reductions there.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any others?
So in fiscal year 2022-2023, we will continue to maintain our reserve accounts. There will be some changes that I am recommending to the board for our reserve accounts and for our community. Those reserve accounts are our fiscal planning, our fiscal savings accounts, so to speak, which will be 5 reserve accounts. our capital infrastructure and bridge reserve. And that account, that reserve is where we plan for our capital purchases through the year 2038 currently. And that's essentially planning for our tomorrow today. Our disaster and emergency reserve, which is used for hurricanes or major disasters or major widespread community emergencies. Our millage sustainment reserve, which the board established several years ago after the Great Recession, and that those funds are assigned and meant to be utilized to help the district prevent massive salary reductions or mass layoffs, to provide some stability if we see an economic catastrophe or crisis again. We have a firefighter presumptive illness reserve, and I will be recommending to you this evening for your consideration for the next fiscal year that we establish a new reserve titled the Station 31 Headquarters Reserve, specifically for the construction of the new facility. Projected at this fiscal year end, all reserve balances are projected to come in at $8,471,735 at the end of fiscal year 21-22. So some of the reserve count changes I'm going to recommend to you is we have a reserve account called OPEB, which is Other Post-Employment Benefit Reserve, which we created when the government accounting rules changed and there was requirements that we had to, save or disclose for such events as the Florida retirement system becoming fiscally insolvent. Well, we do not have the fiscal means to save enough money if the Florida retirement system became fiscally insolvent. So we have some money there that could be better used in other organizational reserves that will benefit the taxpayer as well as the district overall. So therefore, I'm going to recommend that we transfer $135,865 of that reserve to the millage sustainment fund. And then I'm going to recommend that we move $629,995, which will close that reserve, to our capital infrastructure and bridge reserve. And why I'm recommending that is to provide catch-up funds to that reserve to help us with our new fleet funding methodology, because next fiscal year we are anticipating needing to buy a fire engine, and we don't want to negatively impact the taxpayers with a millage increase. This is the amount we need to catch up that plan to allow us to be a self-funded and get the best terms and the best deal for a new fire engine. Yes, sir.
What's a fire engine cost now?
Ooh, well, the last district, I believe, was Estero. We were looking at, I believe, the chief told me $615,000 was the price he got on that fire engine. There's been a dramatic increase in fire apparatus, ambulances, every vehicle out there. So there's been some dramatic increases over the last 2 years. I'm scared to think in 18 years what the fire truck, the ladder truck, will cost us.
We're saving for it.
We're saving for it. So I am going to recommend to the board that we change our funding goal in the millage sustainment reserve, that we will achieve over time. I'm not recommending we do it all at once, but I want to start increasing our savings goals for that millage sustainment. And the reason that I'm recommending this to you, historically it's been $1.2 million. I would like to see a little bit more in that reserve to $2 million to be a goal for us to achieve over 3 or 4 fiscal years, because we are in uncharted historic economic times, and depending on the expert, you're either going to continue to go up or you're going to go down. And I would just feel better if we have a little bit more savings, just in case we have a profound economic downturn or slowdown in the economy. Then I'm going to recommend that we establish the Station 31 replacement reserve. This is going to be specifically for savings for the new facility. This reserve, at some point, once we start construction, will transition from an assigned reserve under the control of the board to a construction fund, and that's where we will be paying our general contractors from as we need draws and things of that nature during construction. The initial startup money from this reserve will come from the Capital Infrastructure and Bridge Reserve. We're going to make a withdrawal of the funds that's already saved for this facility. We're going to transfer that money out of there and put it into this reserve and specifically assign it under your control. And our goal is going to be 50% of the guaranteed maximum price before we start construction. We want to have 50% cash before we ever say let's go forward, because of the debt service manageability long-term for the district. So our Capital Infrastructure Bridge Reserve is built through 2038. This allows for stability in the mill rate, and it operates on a straight line depreciation model. What do I mean by a straight line depreciation model? We take the purchase price of a capital asset and we determine its service life and divide it. That gives us a savings goal per year, but we're not done. We determine what the inflation factor is per year, add that to the savings goal per year, and that equals out to the savings per year over its useful life for the replacement of that new asset. So think of it as, I'm buying this pen today for $1. I know in 5 years I won't be able to buy that pen for $1. It's going to probably be $1.50. So we want to make sure we're saving appropriately year over year to replace this pen. This slide here will represent what our contribution and acquisitions will be from the capital sustainment and replacement program for fiscal year 22-23. We anticipate starting the new fiscal year with a total balance of $6,081,741. We're planning to make scheduled contributions totaling $1,224,520. We're going to make $667,124 in plan adjustment. Our scheduled expenditure for capital needs in 2022-2023 equal out to $1,387,290. And I have a highlighted cell here representing a withdrawal of $3,493, which will be the amount of money we deduct from this reserve to start our Station 31 headquarters construction reserve. That will leave our Capital and Infrastructure Bridge Reserve with $3,585,602. Our reserve projections for fiscal year 2022-2023 across all of the reserves that I've discussed with you this evening, our final projected balance will be just over $12 million at $12,023,632. Are there any questions on reserves, commissioners? So this slide I put together specifically for some community considerations. So when we look at this, the district overall, or any other special district, a special district is a limited form of government. It's easy for people to look at the Fort Myers Beach Fire Control District to say, oh, it's a fire department. Well, we provide the same services as a fire department, but we are not a fire department. We are our own limited governmental entity, and because we are a limited form of government with one specified purpose, the state legislators have said, okay, well, you have a limited funding source. You get some user fees, inspection fees, ambulance fees that you can assess, but we're going to limit you to ad valorem taxes, property taxes, or non-ad valorem assessment, which is a flat tax. Our district has historically used user fees and ad valorem taxes. Now, other general purpose governments have communication tax. They have multiple streams of revenue because they're large, diversified general purpose governments. So that's why when you look at a special district, especially a fire district, your millage rate will be higher than a general purpose government, But if you really get into those general purpose governments, you'll see multiple streams of revenue, from tourism dollars to fuel taxes to communication taxes and a variety of different fees. So it's really important, and I really want the community to understand, we're a human resource intensive organization. We're providing the third or fourth most costly municipal service with limited funding sources. So ad valorem accounts for a majority of our funding, 92.9%. Then user fees and impact fees come up to about 7% of our revenue, and that all goes into our general fund, which is our operating budget and our reserves. So we're not just a fire department. We are a governmental entity, and when the roof leaks in one of our facilities, we don't have the luxury of picking up the phone and hitting an external extension and calling the facilities guy. We have to provide the facilities guy, and then we have to pay for the time and material to replace or fix that roof that's leaking. In a municipal government, larger general purpose government, if you're working at a fire station, you pick up the phone because the roof's leaking, you've got a facilities department, you've got different entities and different departments. We have to provide all of those resources ourselves to support our limited governmental entity. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about funds carried forward and unallocated funds. I think this is really important for everyone to understand. So every year when you look at our budget, we have funds carried forward, which include our designated reserves, revenues that are collected in excess of what we projected, expenses not incurred in that fiscal year, but we may incur them the following year, so we carry those funds forward and reallocate them into the budget. Unfilled positions, if we budget for a position and we haven't been able to recruit for it in that fiscal year, those funds are carried forward, especially if we're not eliminating the position. Professional fees, like our construction project, we've been carrying professional fees forward every year in our funds carried forward because it's an ongoing process as we design the facility. And vehicles not received, like the ambulances. We've had supply chain issues with the ambulances, so we've had to carry those funds forward because we don't pay for those vehicles until we take physical possession of them. And then the unallocated funds include any funds carried forward over the amount of our reserves and our expenses reallocated for a specific purpose. So at year's end, when it comes to unallocated fund, historically, we will have some money that isn't specifically designated. But that's never our goal in budgeting. That amount of money can vary widely. And typically, once our audit is complete, we will bring those unallocated funds before this body, and you will make a decision where you assign those unallocated funds into which reserve account those funds go to. Unallocated funds are not consistent, thus we cannot plan for them or plan on how to pay a facility or wages or benefits for an employee because they are so inconsistent. We never plan or anticipate having unallocated funds. The goal of governmental budgeting is to have a balanced budget. Ideally, at year's end, when we hit September 30th, our budget would be at zero. What I have here this evening, and I'll blow it up a little bit so you guys can all see it clearly, is the proposed budget at 2.985 mils, which will give us a total revenue of $16,190,107. Our fund balance and reserves brought forward will be $12,700,000 to give us total revenues and funds brought forward of $28,890,107. Our total operating expenditures, sorry about that, our total operating expenditures for the new fiscal year will come out to $16,866,475. Our designated fund balance or reserves Sorry about that. My computer's acting a little wonky. Will be $12,023,632 with total expenditures and reserves equaling $28,890,107 for a balanced budget, which I present to you this evening. Thank you for your time and your consideration. Are there any questions I can answer for any of you?
Jackie?
None, thank you.
Jim?
I would just make the observation that I think you have done an outstanding job of putting together this budget, trying to make it so that we can understand it and that the public can understand it. And it looks to me like it's very fiscally sound.
Ron?
No questions, but I agree with Jim.
John?
I concur. The only point, if you can clarify just a little bit on our fund balance reserves brought forward this year at $12,700,000, and then we go down to line 28, the designated fund balance, that does not have any carryover in it that may occur throughout the year, correct? That's just what we're planning on for our total reserves.
That is correct, right, Jane?
The 12 million at the bottom
Yes, ma'am.
is strictly reserve.
Strictly reserves.
And the reserves are a part of that cash carry forward.
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I'd say that when you clarify that we are a district and not a department, I think that's very important and it makes it very clear to me and I'm sure everyone else. So nice job on that, Chief. Okay. Anything else on that presentation? If not, we'll move along to the adoption of the tentative millage rate, and that'll be resolution 2022-02. At this time, Chief, would you care to introduce that to us, and then we'll go about.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Bear with me a minute. I'm having some technical difficulties here. Yes, sir. So this is, the blue sheet you have in front of you is to adopt the tentative millage rate. The recommended millage rate is 2.9851, and the purpose is to establish a tentative millage rate at the first of the two public budget hearings for the year ending September 30th, 2023. The district has historically provided three opportunities to adopt a final millage rate as outlined in Florida State Statute 200.065. On July 27th, the board adopted the truth in millage rate, and tonight is the first tentative public hearing on the budget for September 14th. And later in the meeting, we will discuss setting the time for the final budget hearing plan for September 28th.
Thank you. This time we'll open the floor to public input. If you have any public input, please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Seeing none, we'll close that portion. At this time, any discussion? John?
Nothing that I have in particular. It's, I think, my recommendation that we move forward with the 2.9851. It not only sustains our operations, but it plans for our future, which is critical, especially having uncertain times like we've had for the past 12 months plus. So I look forward to moving forward with it.
Thank you. Ron?
No comment.
Jim?
I agree with Commissioner Bennett.
Jackie?
I agree with Commissioner Bennett.
As do I. So at this point, I would ask someone to read resolution 2022-02.
That'll be there.
John, would you please do that first?
Resolution number 22-02. Whereas the Board of Commissioners of the Fort Myers Beach Fire Control District has properly noticed and has held its public hearing to set the tentative millage rate for the 2022-2023 fiscal year on Wednesday, September 14th, 2022 at 5:15 p.m. Now therefore, pursuant to Florida Statute 200.065, the Board of Commissioners of the Fort Myers Beach Fire Control District hereby adopts and sets the tentative operating millage rate of 2.9851 mils. That's $2.98.51 per $1,000 of net taxable assessed value for the fiscal year 2022-2023. The above stated tentative millage rate of 2.9851 mils exceeds the rollback rate of 2.6463 mils by 12.8%. This resolution shall take effect immediately upon its adoption.
Okay, thank you very much. Foregoing resolution was offered by Commissioner Bennett. And do we have a second for this?
Second.
Okay. Okay. And that was offered by Commissioner Bennett to move the resolution's adoption. Motion was seconded by Commissioner Fleming. And upon being put to a vote, the vote was as follows. Commissioner Wood says yes. Commissioner Fleming?
Yes.
Commissioner Bennett?
Yes.
Commissioner Rezac?
Yes.
Commissioner Nickel?
Yes.
That is 5-0. It's duly passed and adopted on this 14th day of September 2022. Thank you very much. Okay. And the next item is adoption of the tentative budget, Resolution 2022-03. And Chief?
All right, Mr. Chair, thank you once again. So this resolution adopts our tentative budget for fiscal year 2022-2023. Over the past several weeks, the presentation, staff and I have been finalizing all the quotes, comparing all of our data, and we presented to you tonight a tentative budget, total expenditures and reserves of $28,890,107. We set the tentative trim rate on July 14th to support a proposed budget that includes any additions and required for future facility planning. This evening, I recommend the adoption of a tentative budget to support the current levels of service and plan for our future facility funding. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I'll open the floor to public input. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Seeing none, we'll close that portion. Any discussion? Commissioner Rezac?
None, thank you.
Commissioner?
No.
No? And I have none. Okay. So at this time, we have a resolution, and I've asked Commissioner Nickel to read that for us.
This is resolution number 2022-03. Whereas the Board of Commissioners of the Fort Myers Beach Fire Control District has noticed and has held its public hearing to set the tentative budget for the 2022-2023 fiscal year on Wednesday, September 14th, 2022 at 5:15 p.m. Now therefore, pursuant to Florida Statute 200.065, the Board of Commissioners of the Fort Myers Beach Fire Control District hereby adopts and sets the tentative budget, setting forth the appropriations and revenue estimate for the fiscal year 2022-2023 in the amount of $28,890,107. This resolution to take effect immediately upon its adoption.
Thank you very much. The foregoing resolution was offered by Commissioner Nickel. We move the resolution's adoption. Do we have a second?
So moved.
Commissioner Rezac? Motion was seconded by Commissioner Rezac. Upon being put to a vote, the vote was as follows. Commissioner Wood, yes. Commissioner Fleming?
Yes.
Commissioner Bennett?
Yes.
Commissioner Rezac?
Yes.
Commissioner Nickel?
Yes.
It's unanimous. It is duly passed and adopted on this 14th day of September 2022. Thank you very much. Okay, the next item on the agenda, establish a final budget hearing date. Chief?
Yes, Mr. Chair, so in agreement with Chapter 200 of Florida statutes, it is time for us to set our final budget hearing, which is tentatively scheduled for September 28th. We have looked at all of the different requirements, and staff is recommending that the final budget hearing be set for September 28th, 2022 at 5:10 p.m. here at the Fort Myers Beach Public Library.
Okay, thank you. Now, Chief, we have a meeting that same evening?
Yes, we will have a regular scheduled Board of Fire Commissioners meeting as well that day at 5 PM. So we will be starting that meeting, continuing it, pausing and continuing that meeting till after the final budget hearing at 5:10 PM.
And we'll conclude our business.
Yes.
That's great. Okay, any public input on the final budget hearing date? Please hold your comments to 3 minutes or less. Seeing none, we'll close that portion. Any discussion from any commissioners?
My only discussion is that I'll be away on a business trip for a conference, so I'll be zooming in for that.
Great. And you'll work with Craig to make sure.
The chief is already aware.
Super. Sounds good. Any other discussion? Okay, do we have a motion to approve that date?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 5-0. At this time, we'll move to Fire Chief remarks.
I had very limited comments. I talked a lot this evening, but I wanted to say thank you for your support, your faith, and we look forward to the final budget hearing and our Board of Fire Commissioner meeting on September 28th. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, we'll start with Commissioner Fleming.
I'd like to comment that of the outstanding job Chief Martin and staff did putting this packet together. It explains why we are towards the maximum of our millage rate, but it's money that is going to be well spent.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anything else?
No.
Sorry. Jim?
I just wanted to say I was very excited to get your information today about hiring 3 new firefighters. I know the fact that we have been down a number of people has put tremendous strain on the organization, and the men and women of this organization have stepped up to fill that void to the best of their ability, but it will help matters a lot to get these positions filled. So I just wanted to congratulate you on getting those 3 guys on board, and hopefully we can continue to fill those positions so that we can level things out a little bit here for you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lezak?
Concur with both of those comments. I also wanted to add, I've gotten some comments recently about the social media posts, and folks are enjoying seeing those, so I don't know where those are coming from or who's doing them, but especially like today, the pool training for the new firefighters, it is being noticed and appreciated, and I think it's nice. It's connecting the community with the team, so keep up the good work on it. Thank you, John.
Thank you. John?
Concur with everybody else's comments, and really can't thank Chief and the staff enough for putting this budget together. It really is the biggest job we have as a board, and I know the hardest job we have as an organization to determine our future and to do it responsibly, and I truly appreciate it. And would ask that anybody listening in online and encourage if people have questions, please attend our final budget hearing because we appreciate the input.
Thank you. And I'll concur with all the other comments and say that I'm looking forward to moving ahead with the new building at some point and being able to afford it. And I appreciate all the work you're doing to make sure that we can afford it and it's not going to be a shell that can't be filled. So I appreciate your financial efforts from the whole team. All right, I have nothing else. Any others? If not, this meeting is adjourned.
Yeah.
Thank you.